All right, when we left off, guys, we were talking about rating politicians, and the higher the rating, the more likely you are to vote for that candidate if your interest group is in favor of them. We talked about somebody with the NRA having a rate of 93 as opposed to a 67. You're going to be more likely to vote for the candidate with a 93. They also build coalitions with other groups with similar interests to make them stronger. So at one time, there were several different business groups, and they, like the AFL, became partners with the CLO or something. So they come together to make themselves even stronger, have a bigger membership, have more money. They also provide campaign assistance. This is going to be a very big important part of it, that they are going to basically bribe politicians by offering them money for their campaigns. Now, the interest groups can't do that so much as lobbyists can throw parties, like we talked about in our little mini story. Some indirect techniques that they can use is when they try to get people to influence policymakers. So they generate public pressure. They use constituents as lobbyists. Constituents are the people that are out there voting. So we are a constituent of Paul Ryan in our area. We can do this through social media, trying to get people to follow hashtags. And then there's going to be marches, rallies, and potentially even civil disobedience, which you could see in like the March on Wall Street and stuff like that. In 1946, Congress decided that there was enough issues with lobbyists and interest groups that they might need to start to have a little bit of reform. This first one isn't overly successful, but it's a start. And one of the ways they start is by just defining what a lobbyist is. And Congress defines a lobbyist at this time as any person or organization that receives money to be used principally to influence legislation before Congress. So you are given money principally to influence legislation before Congress, and you have to publicly disclose that you are a lobbyist. However, they did not say anybody that was supposed to actually enforce this requirement. So some people sign up as lobbyists, but most don't. Interest groups would say, oh, we have like one or two lobbyists, when really they had a whole bunch. This was tested in a Supreme Court case in 1954 to see if it was constitutional or to see if it violated the First Amendment or if there were other issues, and the Supreme Court said that the bill held up. However, once again, even though it held up and was constitutional, it had little impact. They try again in 1955, and they changed the 1995, not 1955, 1995, and they changed the definition of a lobbyist to anyone who spends 20% of their time lobbying Congress staff or the executive branch. Lobbyists must register with the clerk of the House and the secretary of the Senate. They have to offer quarterly reports of what they are doing and how they are spending their money. And also foreign firms must also register. So there's a section in the textbook that's going to talk about global companies and other foreign nations and their interest groups and how that affects American politics. So check that part out. And then there are some exempt groups, and those are going to be like the grassroots groups or the tax exempt groups. So I told you I belong to the ELCA, and they have a branch that is like an interest group, but they don't have to follow this. It's different for them. And then 1995, they also limit gifts, kinda, sorta. But they have some trouble doing that because, well, Congress people kind of liked those gifts. So there is some controversy over this, and sometimes it goes wrong. So a famous lobbyist named Jack Abramoff went to jail for breaking the rules. He was giving politicians money directly. He was basically bribing them. And now all gifts have to be approved through the Ethics Committee. However, that doesn't take away, we're hosting a conference. Would you like to attend this conference that once again is in Maui, and it's a 2-week retreat, and we're going to pay for your hotel room, and we're going to pay for all this stuff, and our next one is going to be in Las Vegas. There's a whole bunch of ways for people to get around this, but we have a start, and having it go through the Ethics Committee is a good place for that. And then at the end of your chapter, it asks, are interest groups actually part of a democracy? One, not everyone is represented. Think back to how we mentioned the poor, the handicapped, the youth. It gives some people more power than others, especially those with money. And it kind of goes with the elitist form of government. So those in power are going to have more control and more emphasis. And there's 3 forms of government, if you remember: the elitist form, and then there's the pluralist form, and then there's the, anybody remember? Majoritarian form. So the majority gets a say. The pluralist theory, we all work together and we all get a say, and then the elitist theory, where the country is basically run by a small group of powerful people. However, the idea of interest groups is pretty democratic. Overall, special interest groups are supposed to work together to a greater good that eventually benefits everyone, and that is the goal of your interest groups, hopefully. All right, bye guys, see you in class.